What's up, everyone? It is May 28th, 2025. In today's video, we're going to go back overseas and take a second look this time this year at the sport of sumo wrestling and talk about how English gematria is actually relevant to this sport. So, the story is that in the May tournament, Rikishi Ōnosato won his second straight Emperor's Cup from the rank of Ozeki, which virtually guaranteed him promotion to the rank of Yokozuna, the highest rank in all of sumo wrestling. Back in January, Sumo crowned another Yokozuna, Hoshoryu, the 74th in the history of the sport, and I made a video on that. Now, at the time, I hadn't seen anyone else try to apply English gematria to the sport of sumo, and I discovered very quickly that it is relevant. You'll find this video linked below, although I was pretty sick when I made it, so you might just want to read the post. It's a very short post, straight to the point, and I think is great evidence that English gematria is helping script this sport. Now, in today's video, we're going to look at how the promotion of the sport's newest Yokozuna, the 75th in the history of sumo, Ōnosato Daiki, or Daiki Nakamura, is scripted alongside World Wrestling Entertainment, or the WWE. Now, of course, everyone knows WWE is scripted, and sumo has been embroiled in many scripting controversies where wrestlers were rigging the matches before. And one must wonder if this is still the case. In this video, we're going to explain how the promotion of the sport's newest Yokozuna is connected to WWE's Yokozuna, a two-time world champion who was in the promotion in the 1990s. Yokozuna is part of the anoa'i family, as he wasn't actually Japanese, but instead a Pacific Islander. And the anoa'i family also produced superstar Roman Reigns, perhaps the most popular name of anyone in the family. On the date that the May tournament ended, Sunday, May 25th, this was the birthday of Yokozuna's relative, Roman Reigns. In the WWE, Roman Reigns used to be a partner with Solo Sikoa, his real-life cousin, whose middle name is Yokozuna. Solo Sikoa's father is another wrestler from the WWE named after the sport of sumo, Rikishi, which is essentially the name for a sumo wrestler. Then, later on in this video, we're going to explain how the new Yokozuna named Ōnosato is connected to Yoko Ono and the assassination of John Lennon, Yoko's husband. So we'll save the Beatles stuff for a little bit later. First, I want to focus on how this is all connected to the WWE. We'll just be looking at a few numbers. There's probably some synchronicity here I might be missing. But I mentioned Ōnosato in my video yesterday, where I discussed the Indianapolis 500, as well as the Monaco Grand Prix, both of which occurred on Sunday. Sunday's date, May 25th, had numerology of 75, which connects to this story, because this is the sport's 75th Yokozuna in history. It's also been 75 years since the establishment of the Yokozuna Deliberation Council. Notice how sumo wrestling has a gematria value of 75 as well. This is in one of the base 4 methods of English gematria, reverse reduction, also known as Pythagorean gematria. And remember, on that date with 75 numerology, on Sunday, that was the same date as the Indy 500 in Indianapolis. In the same cipher, both of these sum to 75. And yesterday I pointed out how Sunday also had multiplicative numerology of 500, which is ideal for a date of a race that goes 500 miles. But also check out Standard English Gematria, one of the primary extended methods I teach on this channel, which most closely mirrors the ancient Hebrew and Greek charts. Notice how the word sumo equals 500, connecting to the date that this sumo ascended to the rank of Yokozuna. So how is this all connected to pro wrestling here in the United States? Well, Ōnosato is somewhat of a stage name, or a shakona, as it's called in Japanese. Ōnosato's real birth name was Daiki Nakamura. The most popular Japanese superstar in modern WWE is named Shinsuke Nakamura, a man with the same surname. Still a member of the company. In fact, he's been United States champion quite recently. Now, back in the 90s, WWE debuted a new wrestler named Yokozuna, who, again, was not Japanese, but instead was a member of the anoa'i wrestling family, essentially royalty in WWE. This wrestler, Yokozuna, passed away in the year 2000, which is the same year that Japan's newest Yokozuna was born. And this is the first Yokozuna to be from Japan in over 8 years. The pro wrestler's real name was Rodney Agatupu Anoa'i. In the standard alphabetic order, his name sums to 208. Well, if you look at the number 208, we find that the 208th prime number is 1283. This promotion was secured in a vote held on Monday, May 26th, which was exactly 1,283 weeks after the death of the pro wrestler Yokozuna. But also notice how this number contains the digits 1, 2, 8. In the alphabetic order, Yokozuna equals 128. This month's Makuuchi tournament was held in Tokyo, Japan, which also equals 128. Now, although the promotion was secured on Monday, the official ceremony was held today, Wednesday, May 28th, which just so happens to fall 128 days before the birthday of Yokozuna, the pro wrestler. Now, later on, we're going to connect this to the Beatles through Yoko Ono. Today is 1,280 days after the release of the Beatles film called Get Back. Remember back in 2021, a documentary that was like 60 years in the making almost was finally released to Disney+. And that was 1,280 days ago. And when you write out the name of that documentary in the Latin or Agrippa's key method of gematria, notice how get back equals 128. These digits also reflect the date December 8th or 12/8 on the calendar, which happens to be the date that John Lennon was killed. The word kill even sums to 128 in prime numbers. And again, all connecting back to Yokozuna, 128, the number of days before his birthday. So as I mentioned earlier, the biggest superstar to emerge from the anoa'i pro wrestling family, which has quite the impressive lineage, contains famous wrestlers like The Rock, I suppose you could say he was probably more famous than Roman Reigns, but never held the title for nearly 4 years as Reigns did. Now, when we talk about the Beatles later, we're also going to look at how it's connected to the Catholic Church and the papacy. The papacy is headquartered in Rome, so you could say they reign over the city of Rome. Well, on the date that Ōnosato won the Emperor's Cup, Sunday, May 25th, that was the 40th birthday of Roman Reigns. And in the reverse alphabetic order, the word sumo equals 40. Up until recently, Roman Reigns was aligned with his real-life cousin, Solo Sikoa. And I think it was it WrestleMania where they squared off in a tag match or something to that effect. And again, this guy's middle name happens to be Yokozuna. Joseph Yokozuna Fatu has matching gematria in 3 ciphers with the name Ōnosato Daiki Nakamura. In fact, it also equals 237, like Daiki Nakamura in reverse. Now, this whole riddle comes together very well through the digits 777. Now, another thing worth mentioning is that Ōnosato became Yokozuna at a record pace. It took him only 13 tournaments in the top division before achieving this rank. No one's ever done it that quickly. And you have to appreciate that the name Ōnosato equals 99, just like the number 13. Now, in the Latin form of gematria, the name Ōnosato Daiki Nakamura equals 777. Now, if you multiply 7 times 7 times 7, you actually get a product of 343. See here? The 7th cube number. 343. WWE's Yokozuna died at the age of exactly 34 years and 3 weeks of age. When Ōnosato secured promotion to Yokozuna, it was 3,043 days after the last Japanese Rikishi to get the same promotion. And again, these connect to the digits 777. Ōnosato was born exactly 377 weeks after Solo Sikoa, whose middle name is Yokozuna. That man was born on the 77th day of the year. Solo Sikoa's father, Rikishi, who was also named after the sport of sumo, was 21,777 days of age when Ōnosato got the promotion. And when Yokozuna, the pro wrestler, died, he was 1,777 weeks of age. His cousin, Solo Sikoa, whose name has the Yokozuna, was 2,777 days old on that same date. Numeric ritual, also with the 777 code. Once again, connecting to this wrestler's full name. However, if we instead write this out in the alphabetic order, we get another very interesting number. Notice how Ōnosato Daiki Nakamura equals 213 in the alphabetic order. The 213th prime number is 1303. And on today's date, for the promotion ceremony, Ōnosato was exactly 1,303 weeks old. If you take his common name as it's listed on Wikipedia right here, Ōnosato Daiki, this sums to 133 in the alphabetic order, and also 1,033 using triangular numbers. So very simple. You just take out the Nakamura, and there's the 133. Solo Sikoa was born on a date with primary numerology of 133. But on this channel, I often talk about the number 1303 in relation to coronavirus, which equals 1303 in Latin. The number associated with coronavirus was 19. Of course, the disease was called COVID-19. Well, 133 days is also 19 weeks. And coronavirus was first made a national emergency in the United States on the 13th of March, or 1303. When the Deliberation Council promoted Ōnosato, it was 1900 days after that 1303 date that was so significant here in America. But this brings us to John Lennon and Yoko Ono, whose birthdays were 133 days, or 19 weeks apart. And again, the connection is very simple. A Yokozuna named Ōnosato, which contains some of the same syllables as Yoko Ono. Yoko Ono was born in the year 1933, and curiously, the name Ōnosato Daiki equals 1933, using square numbers. There's even a strong connection between John Lennon and Joseph Fatu, the current, quote, Yokozuna of the WWE. Fatu was born 12 years and 100 days after Lennon was shot. And in the alphabetic order, the names Joseph Fatu and John Lennon both equal 121. If you instead measure from Lennon's death to Ōnosato's birth, you get 19 years and 5 months. Well, Ōnosato was born 19 weeks and 5 days before the death of WWE's Yokozuna. This is the ordinal value of the phrase sumo wrestling, 195. WWE's current Japanese superstar with the same last name, Shinsuke Nakamura, his name also equals 1,095. These, by the way, are the same 4 digits in the year 1950, which is when the Yokozuna Deliberation Council was first formed. And notice how this council was formed on the date April 21st. This year, April 21st was the date of the death of the Pope. When Yokozuna passed away in the year 2000, he was 421 lunar phases old, matching the council's founding date of April 21st. Furthermore, 421 is the 82nd prime number, and Yokozuna's real name, Rodney Agatupu Anoa'i, sums to 82, which matches John Lennon's full name, John Winston Lennon, 82 in reduction. In fact, if you go back on my channel and search for John Lennon and Bray Wyatt, or maybe just Bray Wyatt, I did this video about Bray Wyatt returning to WWE, and this happened on John Lennon's 82nd birthday. So it's just interesting that this number comes up again in connection to WWE. The Pope died on the 75th anniversary of the Council's founding, and again, this will be the 75th Yokozuna. Real quick, I just want to point out a post I made back in the year 2021. And I talked about the synchronicity connecting the Beatles to the Catholic Church. Because, think about it. The Beatles are made up of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And in the 70s, the first pope with a double name was elected. And the name he chose was John Paul I. And we, of course, had John Paul II after this pope died just 33 days after he was elected. A couple years ago, Pope Francis beatified John Paul I. And it's interesting that people in the Catholic Church get beatified. Right? We're talking about a riddle connected to the Beatles. So if you want to do more digging into this, I left a number of links down below in the description. But next I want to look at the connection with the new Yokozuna to Yoko Ono. Ōnosato was born on June 7th, or 6-7, connecting to his first name, Daiki, which equals 67 with capital letters. When Daiki was born, Yoko Ono was 67 years and 110 days old. 110 is the ordinal value of Yoko Ono. Now, in reverse, her name equals 79, which is the 22nd prime number. Ōnosato was promoted on a date with 22 numerology, which matches the word sumo in reverse reduction. But the big connection is that the word sumo equals 68 in the alphabetic order. On the date of his promotion, Yoko Ono was 33,700 days old. And 337 is the 68th prime number. In fact, Yoko was born 33 years and 7 months before WWE's Yokozuna. But of course there's more, and I think this is even stronger. Consider how the word moon has Hebrew gematria of 38. And Ōnosato he was promoted 308 lunar phases after he was born. I talk about death so much on this damn channel. Sometimes I just say people die when they haven't. But this is interesting because the word Yokozuna equals 38. And this happened after he won a tournament in Tokyo, Japan, which is 38. The name Daiki is 38. Ōnosato Daiki is 380. And he secured promotion 3 months and 8 days after the birthday of Yoko Ono, whose name also equals 38. Now, in another cipher I don't talk about too much, as this method yields pretty large numbers, but the reverse standard cipher of Gematria. Notice how Yoko Ono also equals 232. Well, this promotion on Monday was also exactly 2,320 weeks after the assassination of John Lennon. These 3 digits also found in the number of days between WWE's Yokozuna and Sumo's newest Yokozuna. But finally, I'll leave you with this. John Lennon was born 2,790 days after his wife Yoko Ono. And after the marriage, Lennon changed his name to John Winston Ono Lennon, which has an alphabetic ordinal value of 279, matching the number of days between their births exactly, just about. Now we have a new Yokozuna named Ōnosato, which also equals 279. WWE's Yokozuna was born 12,279 days after Yoko Ono. And from John Lennon's birth to Ōnosato's birth, you do see the digits 279, with a couple of ones thrown in there as well. So maybe you could say that's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know. I'm just letting you know what I find most intriguing about all of this. And indeed, this is something we've been following for the Beatles for a really long time. This connection to the Pope and the death of Pope John Paul I. Not long before the assassination of John Lennon. So again, if you want to find these posts, they are linked down below in the description. Talk about the eclipse code, the numerology of the assassin Mark David Chapman. But for me personally, my favorite post that I've ever made in relation to the Beatles is also the simplest. And all you have to do is measure between the Beatles' birthdays to realize that something very strange is afoot here. John Lennon was the oldest member of the Beatles before Ringo Starr joined. Now, the Beatles originally consisted of a member named Stuart Sutcliffe, who tragically passed away at the age of just 21 after leaving the Beatles. Now, if you measure from his date of birth to the birthday of John Lennon, we find that they were born 109 days apart. Well, this matches John Lennon's birthday, October 9th, or 10/9. Well, if you measure from Lennon's birth to Paul McCartney's birth on 6/18, June 18th, they were born 618 days apart. Then if you measure from McCartney's birthday to George Harrison's birthday, you get 252 days. And Harrison was born on the 25th of February, or 252. George Harrison was also born 114 days before McCartney's birthday, which is noteworthy because McCartney's birthday is 114 days before John Lennon's. The Beatles member who died did so on the date April 10th, and when his bandmates learned of his death, it was April 11th, which can be written as 11/4 or 4/11. And his full name, Stuart Ferguson Victor Sutcliffe, was 411. When Ringo Starr joined the Beatles, John Lennon was exactly 1,140 weeks of age. And Ringo was born 1 year, 140 days after Pete Best, the last drummer of the Beatles. And if you measure from Pete Best's birthday on 24/11 back to the birth of John Lennon, you get 411 days. So this saga of the Beatles and, what they truly are is quite intriguing, isn't it? Now, I didn't mean to get sidetracked with all of this, but it's just fascinating. The biggest band to really ever exist, transforming music for so many people. Who would guess that they're so aligned by the numbers? I was just thinking about the name Best and how this applies to something else that went on in the world of StarCraft recently, but I'll spare you guys the addition. So with that, I'll just wrap the video up. Once again, if you want to check out more on this same riddle connected to the Beatles and other former Yokozunas in sumo, go ahead and check the links. Peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to y'all next time. See ya.